In this video, we're going to take a look at our sound and haptic settings we have on the Apple Watch, including how we can set our haptic tap to be prominent. Maybe you need it to be a little bit stronger. You're not feeling that Apple Watch vibrate against your wrist. Well, you can set it to be more prominent. We can do this from within the Apple Watch itself, as well as the Watch app on the iPhone. Let's first look at this on my Apple Watch. So I'm looking at my Apple Watch here. Now the first thing that we need to do is we need to go to our Settings app. How do we do that? Well, all we need to do is just press in on the digital crown here, and when we press it in, we can see all of our apps. I'm going to put it in List View. To do that, we just long press on the screen. I like our List View here. And then we just tap on List View. Now I'm easily able to scroll through my apps here on my Apple Watch. So what we're going to do is just use a digital crown until we find Settings. So I swipe up here. There it is. And now I just tap on Settings here. The next thing that we need to do is just swipe up, and down towards the bottom, what you're going to see here, actually it's probably in the middle, but you're going to see Sound and Haptics. This is where we have all of our different settings. So I tap on this, and now we can see I can set my volume for the Apple Watch. All I have to do is just tap on this, and then I can use the digital crown to turn the volume up and down. If we want to put it in silent mode, we just make sure that this slider is on. With silent mode, what it does is it'll silence any alarms and timers when the Apple Watch is charging. So if you're charging it on your nightstand and you do not want it to have any sounds, this silent mode will prevent any sounds from playing. So I like to have that on. Keep scrolling up. We also have Headphone Safety. When I tap on this, what I'm able to do is protect my hearing, because the Apple Watch will measure headphone audio levels if it exceeds a certain amount. After a 7-day limit, what it'll do is it'll turn the volume down. I like to have my music a little bit loud, and I'm paying for it, but I'm just going to leave this off. To go back, we just tap on Headphones at the very top. It can be a little tricky, but just tap on that, and then you go back. Now below that, we also have our haptic tap settings. This is the little vibration that we feel on the Apple Watch when we get a notification, when our Apple Watch rings, when we get a phone call. What we can do is we can turn that haptic off. I like to have it on and actually turn my audio off. So I'm going to leave this on. And then below that, we basically have two settings for it. We can set it for default, or we can set it for prominent. With prominent, what it's going to do is it's going to vibrate a little bit harder. Now, it might affect your battery life depending on how many alerts you get, but you're definitely going to have a better chance of feeling it when it is on prominent. So if you have a hard time feeling that haptic tap, what you may want to do is try prominent. Just make sure that if you have a lot of alerts that you might have to charge your Apple Watch a little bit more. I do believe it does take a little extra battery power. If we keep scrolling up, I'm using the digital crown here to scroll up. Of course, I can always just swipe as well. We also have Crown Haptics. With Crown Haptics, as I rotate the digital crown, I'm going to feel that on my wrist through haptic taps. Think of those little knobs that you turn and they have the little click, 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 click. That's basically what this is trying to simulate. If you don't like that, you can turn that off. I like to leave that on. And then we also have System Haptics. With System Haptics, what it'll do is it'll play haptics for system controls and interactions. So these are Apple Watch system type things. When you long press on the screen, it'll play a little haptic tap telling you that you've long pressed on it. That is a System Haptic. And then if we keep going, we also have Cover to Mute. I really like this. When you get an alert, what you can do is you can mute it just by going over to your Apple Watch and covering it. Now you want to make sure that this is turned on. When you do that, what it'll do is it'll immediately mute the Apple Watch. So if you have your alerts on and you're in the middle of a crowd, or maybe you're at a show or something, all you have to do real quick is just cover it, and then it'll mute it. Now before we go and see how this is on the Watch app on the iPhone, there's one other thing I want to show you. I'm going to press in on the digital crown. I mentioned what I like to do is have my haptic taps on, and I want my Apple Watch to be muted. I don't want any audio coming from the Apple Watch when I get an alert. The way that I do that is I go to the control center, so I swipe up from the bottom here, and then what I do is I make sure that the bell here has a line through it. It is red. This is telling my Apple Watch to be muted, the audio to be muted. Now, if I get a phone call, I still will be able to use the Apple Watch with that phone call. This is basically for alerts and notifications. So those are the sound and haptic settings on the Apple Watch. We have the same settings on the Watch app on the iPhone, and it may be easier to adjust these settings with your iPhone. Let's go over to my iPhone and see how this works on the iPhone. So I'm in my Watch app on my iPhone. The first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we're looking at My Watch. This is where we have all the different settings for your Apple Watch, including, when I swipe up here, sounds and haptics. You're going to see that this is very familiar, although it's going to be easier to set up. I tap on it, and then from here what I'm able to do is set the volume. I can set it for silent mode. I also have my headphone safety, and then I have my haptic alerts. I want to use prominent. I can do that as well. All I have to do is just go over here to prominent, and then the Apple Watch will have more prominent haptic tap. I keep swiping up. I have my crown haptics. This is where I rotate the digital crown. I have system haptics, which is when I press on the display as an example. I'll feel a little haptic tap. And then I can also set if I want to cover to mute. So as you can see, we have a lot of the same options, but it's a lot easier to change the settings when you go into the Watch app. Again, the secret to this is making sure that you're looking at My Watch here. And then all you have to do is just go over to Sound and Haptics. So that's our sound and haptic settings on the Apple Watch and how we can set it on the Watch app on the iPhone, which I think is a lot easier. Also, this is where we can go and set a more prominent haptic tap. If you have a hard time feeling your Apple Watch vibrate, what you may want to do is set it for a more prominent haptic tap. And again, you can do this on the Apple Watch itself, although it probably is a little easier to do it on the Watch app on the iPhone. So those are our sound and haptic settings we have on the Apple Watch.